Good afternoon and welcome into the Takeup. Today we have the WrapUp, Printing United, Embroidery on Demand, and Impressions Expo Long Beach announcements. Hello, folks. Glad to have you in on this Educational Friday. Happy to see you guys in and around this episode. Gotten to talk to lots of people live, lots of people recently out at shows, and very much glad to be able to bring some of that show information back to you guys now. Really had an incredible time over in Orlando and certainly looking forward to even more coming soon. So I've been very happy to get to talk to you guys about everything involved with not only Printing United, but with everything coming up for Impressions Expo, and a little bit about the stuff that I learned both at Printing United and the way that we were being received, the way that embroidery was kind of part of what was going on out there. And really, it's an interesting thing. There's a world of digital printing that's coming around. There's a world of uh, printing on demand, of very direct digital tool chains that embroidery wasn't entirely absent from. And it's interesting to see how it's being pitched that we can fit into this world. So I think that's something we're going to cover today. We're going to talk a little about what was there, certainly talk about what's happening at Printing United, what's happening in Orlando. I will say this. If I have to pause, if I have to mute, I'm a little under the weather after the shows. You know, I often come down with the convention crud, and today is no exception. I feel a little rough after the conventions and after the travel. However, as long as I can maintain my voice, I'll try and do this. It'll be a little bit of a shorter show, perhaps. But we also have next week's show on deck. So the great thing is I can also tell you what's coming up next week and what we're heading into. So the great thing is we've got coverage from the shows, coverage from everything that's been going on, and we're going to get into what we're doing next week and what we're doing going forward as far as education, because we do have better confirmation on stuff that's happening out in Long Beach, California in January as well. So that's what we're talking about today. So, Printing a United Orlando, we're going to talk about embroidery on demand, what that means, and what I think it means to us. And in fact, also what I think really embroidery on demand means in general, and how that differs from what we've been doing, if it differs at all. And there's some questions there and some talk about the new technologies that are coming out there, or at least how the technology people have been using and what has kind of come together to make it interesting and new. So what's same, what's different about embroidery on demand versus embroidery the way we've been doing it. And after that, like I said, we're definitely going to get back in. So Printing United, embroidery on demand, and then we're going to talk about the confirmations and stuff, and make sure you get links for stuff from Impressions Long Beach, and I'll kind of discuss some stuff around that as well, and give you what's happening for next week's show. So there's quite a lot going on today, but it's probably going to be a shorter show. What I do want to say is, just like I have every show, if you have topics you want to see as we get further into embroidery how-to topics, stuff like that, education that's coming up, trust me, there are more options for that coming up in this new year and at the end of this year. So by all means, let me know if there's stuff that you want to hear more about, if you want to see me do that's not being covered here. But certainly for today, I'm going to cover some of the stuff that's been going on, a little bit about what's going on in the space, in the industry, how the show went, and show you some pictures, show you some content from the show, just to give you an idea of what was being said and, like I said, where we fit. But with that, you guys know that I love to talk to who is here live. So everybody who is here live and currently able to communicate, by all means, I want to talk to you. If you are here on the replay squad, then go ahead, hit fast forward, roll on down to the next time you see a banner pop up, and you'll be happy to skip this part. But for the rest of us, we're going to go ahead and talk. So number one, we've got Doug coming in saying, hi, everybody from Los Angeles. Hi, Doug. We've got Jesse coming in as well. Hi, Jesse. Happy to have you in. Always a wonderful commenter. We've got Barb coming in from North Central Minnesota. Good afternoon, she says to everybody. Hi, Barb. Happy to have you in. We've got Cindy King coming out of Texas. So good afternoon, Cindy. Happy to have you in as well. Everybody talking to each other, which I love. Everybody's chatting. I know I see, let's see, we got Frank coming in saying good evening also. Good evening to Frank. Thank you for sharing and always being an awesome supporter of everything embroidery and everything education in your world, sir. So appreciate that. We also have, I know Cindy says more vitamin C. Yeah, I know. For real, I tried the vitamin C. I tried everything. I don't know. I still managed to catch something going on the way out. So hopefully, like I said, you might have to deal with me talking around a cough drop here. You might have to deal with me talking while I mute and drink some water and stuff, but I will certainly try and keep on from that. We have Marta coming in from Texas saying hello. Hello, Marta. Happy to have you in as well. Lots of folks saying hi. Ron saying, have a great show. We'll catch up on the replay squad. Yeah, by all means. And by the way, happy Halloween. I really am not set. I didn't set up a Halloween episode. I thought about it after the fact. I probably should have done some fun Halloween stuff, which I didn't. But hey, most of the time when we're in the decoration space, we're talking about stuff we're going to be doing in the future. We're talking about stuff we're going to do later. So it's like I tend to think about stuff a little further ahead instead of that way. I probably should have shared more Halloween fun stuff earlier. But yeah, last but not least, by all means, we also have Lisa Shaw joining us. So awesome. My compatriot at Embrilliance, who does incredible work and has been sharing some really great projects you guys should be checking out as well. And she's saying greetings from Colorado, and hopefully she's not getting snowed in anytime soon. I know now that I am in Pennsylvania, I have to think very differently about the weather and how that affects everything. We'll see what January travel looks like. I'm a little concerned. But anyway, yeah, as Frank says, good evening all. I'm happy to have you all here, and definitely want to catch up and just, like I said, cover some of the stuff that I saw. I know not everybody gets to go to these shows, and the shows are massive, and no show is more massive than Printing United Orlando. However, what I do want to make really clear to you guys, Printing United is a multimedia show. This is for multi-industry. It is paper printing, it is hard goods, it is UV, it is everything under the sun with a small section of apparel also involved. And in that section of apparel, there's an even smaller subset of embroidery. So what I am going to say is for the people who have asked me, I love Printing United. It was great to go. I really enjoyed it. If I'm choosing one show probably for apparel decorators for the moment, I'm saying if you have one, you can only do one, probably Impressions Long Beach. That one is absolutely 100% dedicated to apparel. So if you are an apparel decorator only and you are not particularly involved in anything else, Long Beach, I cannot say skip. But once in your career, at the very least, if you can, get out to a Printing United show and see the full breadth and depth of what the kind of decoration printing industry is, right? You should see it. It is well worth noting that it's just massive in scope. You cannot fathom how large it is till you get on the show floor, and there's a lot that's going on there. But yeah, let's kind of delve further into it. So Printing United Orlando, of course, happened in Orlando, Florida, just recently. And I got to show up for everything except for the media day. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see that, emceed by our own Aaron Montgomery, who you may know from the Two Regular Guys podcast that I produce. Really cool stuff happening throughout that. And we did have some great product launches and other things on the docket. However, I'm just going to say, you just about couldn't see this thing in one go, but you probably wouldn't want to, because the truth of the matter is, there, like I said, this was multimodal. There's everything, including packaging and automation for paper printing and everything else. There were some very interesting things there. I unfortunately didn't get pictures of everything I wanted to while I was there. However, I do have a fair kind of showing of what's out there in the embroidery world. So I will show you some of the stuff that's going on there, and certainly just talk about that as we get started. And then we're going to talk about some of the themes that I saw going on, and definitely get into embroidery on demand and the printing on demand kind of space to let you know where we fit, or at least where I think it was made to be a place for us. Like, people did make a place for embroidery to be in this thing, but I'm probably going to poke a couple of holes in it. I'm going to talk about it, and we're going to discuss what's new, what's not. And certainly I'm not trying to let the air out of the idea of embroidery on demand, but as we get into it, I am going to talk to you about what I think it is, what I think it's not, and kind of where the holes are and where we all fit. But we're going to get there. First and foremost, let's just go ahead and have a little fun. Let's just look at some pictures from the show just for the heck of it. I just want to show you a little bit about what was going on out there. So here's just my normal, you guys know I like to show my little galleries. When I walked right in the door, I just did a sweep. So this is just back to back to back. I swept from left to right across. I didn't do a proper panorama. This is just to show you, just as you enter the door. And by the way, direct to film printing was everywhere. Also, yep, lots of laser cutters. That's Epilogue in there. But you're going to see DTF is all over the place, including UV DTF, which is UV printing on film used to apply to different kinds of hard goods and other media, not just, of course, the DTF we know, which is really about direct to film and film printing on apparel. But, it is one of those good things to see. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and bring this comment real quickly while I have a chance to. Dan Barefoot, glad to see that we got to at least to pass like ships in the night. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to meet up for the show. I did see you from distance. I didn't get to catch up with Dan. If you haven't seen Dan, Win News. So yeah, he does awesome news stuff for the imaging industry, and you should really be checking that out. So World Imaging News and World Imaging News Latino, so Spanish speaking as well. So Dan, awesome work from Dan always. But yeah, I'm going to go and get back into this. Suffice to say, I couldn't see everybody I wanted to. I got to see lots of awesome people while I was there, but I didn't get to see everybody. Suffice it to say, though, watch me go through this little snapshot of just the door. And by the way, you cannot see everything that's here. As you look through this and as we get to one of the aisles, you'll notice that the kind of fading off into the distance of that ceiling, the entirety of both north and south halls were full. It was entirely full. So that means that when you're looking at this, you are seeing a tiny, tiny fraction, because as you see it like disappearing off into atmospheric distance, you can see way back there, there's a sprinter press, there's all this other stuff. And what you're looking at, even in the middle, you start to see walls that are appearing in the middle. That's actually kind of restrooms and stuff that are in the center of the building in kind of a built up area. So that's just a sweep inside the door. And this is just a hint of it. And there's just a massive show floor there. So I'm just showing you that just to show you that this thing was it's truly massive. Certainly, I'm just going to kind of show a couple of the booths that were there. There are more. I'm not going to get to everybody, but, Tex-Mac was definitely there. You can already see Melco. And here's the other thing to say. This is back in the what we call the apparel zone is around here. We're going to show you that in a moment. The apparel zone where the theater was. There was a live little open theater where we were doing classes. But in this piece, you can see like Tex-Mac is here, Melco is here, but you can see Buy is also back there, which I'm going to discuss again. And you can see ZSK, Natsina was there representing ZSK for the US. And they're all visible. You can see Printavo is over there. You can see Rock in the distance. So showing screen printing and direct to film, not only DTF, but pressing, automated pressing and shirt folding and everything you can imagine for shirts. So Tex-Mac is there. Happy Japan, of course, the machines they have. I actually cut my finger in the shot, but they had some of their smaller machines there as well. You can see, like I said, Natsina is there. So Natsina was there showing ZSK's machines, of course. You see Buy had a really large booth. So I'm going to talk about that again. And they were doing live content. And you may actually notice some of the folks who used to be at Racoma who are there doing content at Buy. So Buy was there with a very large booth. Interesting to note that they appeared. This is the Apparel Zone Theater. So I'm going to show you some other booths before I go too far with that. But the Apparel Zone Theater, I'll talk about in a moment. They were doing, like I said, some live classes, and we're going to go ahead and talk about that in a little bit. But you can see some other booths that were here. We had Stitch International had kind of a smaller, normal sized booth in there. So they've got SWBF machines were there. And you guys once again see Melco's large booth in the background. Melco had a very sizable booth, but they were doing a launch, so I'm not particularly surprised by that. And of course, unsurprisingly, Hirsch is there showing Tajima's machines. We do also have, Hirsch did have, behind the theater, there was this area where there was essentially kind of a journey, a passport journey you could do where you could go through the process of doing decoration, including DTF, printing, and embroidery. Hirsch also provided a couple of small Tajima machines that were running bags and hats for that experience, the Apparel Zone kind of experience. But Hirsch did have their booth there, and of course they were running their latest and greatest, as we know, as well as, their other range of machines. And just to let you guys know, yes, there was some other stuff going on there. Obviously, Stalls had a massive print-on-demand booth with everything you can imagine and lots of interesting samples, because Stalls is always good about that. And by the way, as we were talking about our hat bar, remember me discussing the whole heat pressing, multiple different layers of stuff on hats from an earlier episode? Well, there's an example direct out of the Stalls print-on-demand booth of heat-pressed items on hats. So we had some of that kind of being represented, that concept of the hat bar, the concept of the patches and prints together. So we had some of that going on here with both traditional embroidery and their new liquid 3D product, which is kind of a molded 3D product being kind of represented. Certainly we see like there's Graphtec cutters. I mean, everybody's there who can be there, and I'm not showing you everything that's going on. I tried to show you more embroidery than anything else. The other things to see here, just out of curiosity, I'm going to discuss this one more time as we kind of get into the meat of this thing. Buy also brought their Poulin home embroidery machines, like the standard single needle, flat table machines were there. And I was kind of surprised to see that being represented at particularly this show, which was so widely just industrial in comparison. seeing them showing those machines was kind of interesting. Certainly, we also had some cool stuff from Natsino and ZSK. In fact, I'll probably show that in just a second. They had automated applique with computer vision running. And we can just see some of the, some of the samples over at ZSK. Of course, they were running some nice big stuff as they usually do. Had some great textured hats and some, like I said, nice jacket backs. They run lots of big stuff. And was very interesting in the ZSK booth. They took kind of an interesting tack on showing their latest and greatest, and they had on site this machine. And the fun thing is they had a little sandwich board next to it with a hidden item. It said, "Guess how old I am." And this was an 18-year-old ZSK machine running just absolutely hell-bent for leather and running beautifully. So they had this kind of really cool example of like, hey, guess my age. You can see that here. And they were running this 18-year-old machine and just absolutely tearing it up. So kind of cool to see that somebody was also saying, hey, yeah, the new machines and the new technology is great, but what we also have here are machines that are rock steady. Like I said, they had that guy running hats pretty solidly. Pardon me, folks. But yeah, really interesting to see kind of different takes on how to advertise what's important about our equipment. And certainly, of course, always great samples, lovely big elephant samples in the traditional, by the way, traditional deep wood hoops. I know this is crazy, but sometimes if you are really trying to keep something stable, those are great hoops. If you haven't gotten to run those in your time in embroidery, some of those are great for big jacket back stuff, especially. But yeah, interesting samples, great stuff there. But kind of standard as far as that goes. We definitely had some interesting technologies on their end. I think probably the one thing you might not expect is they had their automated computer vision applique, and this was really where you place something on the sewing field, and what you can see here is it's automatically taking a picture with an added camera, and I believe I've got a shot of the camera. Hopefully, there it is. They're actually using computer vision. I'll try and get a little closer to it. You can see up here that they've got an automated system with a camera that's essentially scanning and tracing appliques and patches and allowing for patch attachment, applique attachment kind of live. So interesting stuff. And of course, you got to take a picture of the 24 needle because why not? It's a monster. That is about as big a cartridge head as you're ever going to see on a machine. So I had to take a picture of that and kind of show that for the heck of it. But yeah, it's just interesting stuff. Lots of cool samples, lots of stuff going on. And not for nothing, I also saw Brother showed up. They brought entrepreneur style machines. So the little prosumer machines were also in their booth, even though Brother was primarily showing their DTF printers there. That's really what they were kind of showing the most of. But they also brought the booth. And like I said, once again, not to be outdone, with all these really big booths from Melco and Hirsch and the normal kind of people that we expect to be there. We also had Buy not only with their machine range, their commercial machine range, but the Pool and Home range and their Richword embroidery supplies. So interesting to see everybody. And of course, I got to see my buddies. I got to just see there's the scale of this whole thing. And then we got to see some friends like you may know from the two other guys, Cassie Green was there, and I got to meet up with her and say hi, as well as all my usual buddies and friends out there at the expo. But yeah, just to kind of wrap that together, I know that was just me rapid fire going through all these crazy pictures and stuff. There are some themes here that I think stick together and are interesting to cover. And like I said, embroidery on demand is probably the biggest theme here that we're going to cover. But there are some other things just to kind of make mention of, certainly. And it is really something that I think is worthwhile to consider, which is that what I saw for the people who are asking, first, the software world, we didn't see a ton of people out with software unless they were riding along. So that's just something to say that I didn't see that as much. Really, it was equipment that was there. It was embroidery machines on the ground. But the theme for the embroidery machines for me was just seeing that everybody is kind of catching up to each other to a degree. So among the major brands, it seems like the features that a few years ago were interesting for one machine or another, it seems like everybody is starting to kind of catch up, where electromagnetic tensioning, automatic presser foot adjustment, or some sort of digital presser foot adjustment was kind of common now. That's what used to be the thing. Certainly when Tajima kind of pushed it as I think one of the largest first group of people who were doing it. Now it's like everybody's kind of got that locked in. they were still kind of showing different models of what's going on, as far as like somebody would say our cap design is this, our ability to go into pockets because of our cylinder arm being thinner is this. There's these kind of arguments were all over the place. You saw the sign from ZSK talking about having their pickerless machine. They have a picker creating loops, and so they can get things really close to the front of that. To the front of their cylinder arm without having anything catch in it, and there's stuff going on there. But there was like, people have caught up to a level of technology that certainly is where I came in with manual tensioning, and certainly the only people who were doing automatic tensioning of any kind for a while was Melco with their active feed system, though their system is like an electronic controlled set of rollers, like mechanical rollers, whereas now it seems like the rest of the major players outside of Melco are really caught up to the electromagnetic tensioning and, like I said, the digital press foot control. However, there were still ranges of equipment that did not have these things on them. And as you saw, disruption still happening, where we had price ranges where, like I said, from Impressions Expo Dallas, we had everything from machines that were $25,000 for a single head to Buy showing up with their lower end at 5 and their more commercial, like their mirror at 5 and their vision at 17, where we had like the new Sprint 8 from ZSK is like 25. So here's the thing. So 5 to 7 versus at 25, just like I said before, I see why people are asking these questions. I see where people are saying these things, why they're saying what's going on with these different price ranges. Why is it that we see this massive range of kind of expectation of these things? Well, I'm just going to say there is disruption there. There is certainly a sort of democratization of the technology of embroidery, with so many people seeing these cheaper machines on offer. And looking at the rest of the machines, though I know there are differences between all the models, when we're looking at the major models, everything from, Tajima, as you might expect, down to SWF having very similar features, that they were kind of touting the same features, it made it feel like you really are going to have to be paying quite a bit of attention, even in the major brands, to say what really is the difference. And I'm still going to go to the point of saying that tech availability, cost for repair, cost for technician travel, cost for repair, overall total cost of ownership is still going to be my guide. However, really, really hard to ignore people on the floor with machines that are a fifth of the cost of the top end. It's really incredibly hard to ignore. And so seeing that happening, especially like I said, when we're looking at this massive presence that we saw from Buy, it's hard for me to ignore that and just say, hey, you must go with the top end machine. Do I love those machines? I certainly do. But saying that this is not a thing when we're seeing them make an effort toward it is hard for me to say, because they had a big presence there and they were certainly making content and showing things. What I think the difference is going to be for the moment is just that the support networks are not the same. It really feels to me, and this is my experience, so I'm going to go ahead and give you all the caveat emptor. If you're going to buy something, you got to be careful for yourself, and you can judge my opinions are my opinions and opinions alone. But truthfully, when I'm looking at this, I'm going to have to say the disruption is there, and the difference is going to be more about support and technicians and the rest. When I see people with trouble with their Buy machines on social media in the Buy groups, they are being helped remotely. They are becoming their own technicians to one degree or another. I'm not seeing people jumping to bring techs in at the price point that these things are at. They are getting direct help. Now, don't get me wrong. The thing that they're probably doing that's keeping it working is that there's a lot of immediate attention in social media groups, and directly, if you contact people at Buy, you get a person to come back and talk to you about it and literally walk you through repairs. Whereas you can't hand this over as easily, I think, to a storied professional like you might over if you had a Tajima, you had a Hirsch machine, something like that. So I think the difference really is a certain amount of support not being there. It doesn't mean that this is necessarily bad. And I would say for the price point, it's very much like when I talk about used equipment. We, at the shops that I ran in, by the time you've got 60 odd heads and you've been running for 10 years, the concept of you buying a piece of used equipment that you'll probably have a tech look over and then you're going to address yourself because you know enough about the mechanical operations for you to do a little work on it, make it work. Used equipment isn't as scary to you because you know if something's going wrong, where it's coming from, you can isolate problems. When we're talking about that, it's very similar to me looking at these machines. If you were just starting a brand new business and you had to have 100% uptime and you had to be able to reach out to somebody who's going to help you directly and be able to send somebody out, having track record, having parts availability. And actually, I just saw that on, it's exactly what Doug just said. Doug said, longevity and track record and parts availability are important. Absolutely. Like I said, total cost of ownership, long-term cost of ownership, TCO total cost of ownership, uh, as a, the total cost of ownership as a sum, that is really what I'm looking at. I want to see that total cost of ownership, and I want to understand what that is with repairs over time. Pardon me, folks. And part of that really means that we don't know that yet. We don't know the longevity. And the funny thing is, you saying that, of course, when I was looking at the ZSK booth, and I'll bring that back up because I thought it was really an interesting thing, that ZSK, of course, had all their brand new stuff, had all their incredible new machines up. But to watch ZSK back to back, and I'm going to bring this up again on the screen share, to see ZSK showing their 24 needle, the big boys, and all the stuff that they had there. So we've got these big, impressive machines. To see the computerized applique operation with computer vision and tracing. But the other thing that they showed that was very interesting that caught my eye was obviously this old gal, the 18-year-old machine that they were running, showing you that, yeah, these machines are running, structured caps, hell bent for leather as fast as they can, and they're running them over years. I mean, have you seen this CSK logo? I bet you probably haven't. You probably don't even know that logo, right? So that's one of those things. You have to say that is important to folks, and that's something to think about, is you've got a machine that's going to last like that. Whereas, can I tell you the track record of a buy machine? I absolutely can't. And have we seen this kind of disruption before? I don't think we're seeing it quite the same way, but I mean, Racoma is a very similar story, and Racoma had a booth there. I forgot to put that picture in the slide deck, but we had a booth from Racoma, and they had 20 needle machines they were running. And certainly, if we know about Racoma, we've seen that they have had hiccups in their fulfillment and in their track record, and very similarly. And some issues with something else that Doug just brings up. I'm going to pop this up as well as I kind of take myself out of this here. A resale value of the machines is certainly lower. And I've seen people who, because of the democratization of the buy machines where they're very cheap, there are sometimes people who get in who, because it's not as much skin in the game, $5,000 doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. And for some folks, $5,000 is more of a throwaway. And so they get in and then they get right back out because they realize embroidery is not just, hoop it up and press play and we're good to go. It's not necessarily a thread printer. And so they end up where they bow back out and then they expect to get the entire money out of that buy machine back, or most of it. And frankly, people aren't paying 75% of what they're worth, because if you go out and you buy a buy machine for $5,000, come back home, you don't love it, and you try and sell it for 4,500, everybody's going to look at that and go, I'm just going to go, the extra $500 is worth me having a brand new one and not picking it up from somebody's shop. So there is some other disruption there too. It actually kind of does something to that market. But what I'm going to say is I can't ignore the machines because I'm seeing people running them who are having a good time with them. And if you are comfortable with the machines and with the technology underneath them, and you don't mind that they do not have, by the way, that's the other thing. The buy does not have electromagnetic tensioning. It does not have a floating presser foot. It's very much like working on the machines that I used to work on when I came in. Not when I came in, more like in the heart of my work, where it was a pretty standard machine that has all the adjustments, but it's manual tensioning, it's twisting knobs, it's not. There's no real easy adjustment to your presser feet. Do you need that to do most embroidery work? No, most embroidery work is not going to be contingent on that. Does it make it easier? Yes. And why? What's the other disruption that's going on here? Why is electromagnetic tensioning important? Why is this presser foot important? Yes, better control. Yes, better quality. But I would say it's actually to take out the skill that the operator has to have to maintain tension and maintain the machine. Operator skill becomes less and less important the more that the machine handles tensioning and other problems. And when you see the movement toward magnetic hooping, so a magnetic hoop doesn't have to be tensioned or adjusted. Now it's pretty much, can you hoop it flat? Can you get it in place correctly? Can you use a hoop master to get the positioning correctly? And then once you clip it in, that's it. The adjustment's not being handled that way. And in fact, I'm going to get to that when we talk about embroidery on demand. Got a couple of other comments. First, I just want to say, Hi to DJ Kev. So I did see you there, man. I'm glad you're here. Thank you very much for being on. And you said, I've been looking at Buy. Great episode. Thank you. Yeah. Honestly, can't ignore it. And I think that those of us who are ignoring it, it's very much like people in the print world who are ignoring AI. AI can be problematic. Certainly, as we're looking at this whole digital tool chain that we're looking at with print on demand, where there are people who want to go from e-commerce front end, from like prompt to AI image straight to the printer. There is certainly a feeling, a palpitation for all of us who've ever done design going, really? No one's going to touch that in between. We're going to try and just spit that straight to direct to film and kick it onto some garment and get it out the door. That's where that commodity decoration comes in and the quality can drop off and it feels bad, right? But ignoring the fact that the design is possible in AI is such a big deal. You can't ignore it. I will say that, yeah, and Doug, I'll go ahead and answer this. Doug also brings up a point. He says, I've had to touch my tension since it was set up on Embroidery. I have not had that experience, sir. We ran on so many varied materials, and I had trouble with tension before. We had to adjust our tensions on certain things, but we also varied our threads sometimes and worked on that stuff. But also, if your machine's in good order, kept clean, and everything's working pretty well, it's not something you're doing all the time. You're not juking around with your tension all the time. If you're moving around, you're changing, of course, you're changing like thread weights, things like that. Obviously, you're going to have to mess with tension. And if you're running metallics off and on, and different textures, you might thick threads, thin threads, different textured threads, you might have to play with tension. But when you're setting up well, I mean, it's not a constant thing. But I will say, tensioning is one of the things I see people doing incorrectly in a lot of these spaces, especially when they buy machines that are usually not set up by a tech and that they're getting kind of used. That's where we see people kind of fail. And I think having the ability to control that, very much like Melco's been doing for a really long time with their mechanical tensioners, where you have a central person able to control these things who is the skilled person who knows what might have to vary if you're doing something with a specialty material or thread. I see why people are doing that, because for this digital tool chain, we do need to have the ability to control more of the variables a little bit if you are expecting to do custom work on those tool chains. But I'm still going to say there's something to that. We're going to cover that here shortly. Like I said, hard to ignore the disruption, but it's not necessarily going to unseat any of the big folks. What it is democratizing the lower end. So the smaller producers who are getting in, the people who are just getting interested, and certainly I'm actually just seeing people adding a little bit more production capacity than they might have before. And as long as they can cover their nut, as it were, I can see that, right? It is interesting to see that stuff. And admittedly, the way that Buy is handling the transparency and communication is attractive to a lot of people. I think we have Marta saying something here too. She says, interesting take on Buy. Since they will help with all repairs, it takes the mystery of what's under the hood. Granted, you have to man the tools, but it's not as mysterious as I always thought. I think that's what's going on right now. We also have, and I said not to put too fine a point on it, as younger people come into the industry who have largely been self-serving on a lot of things and are used to kind of running to YouTube to get a video to fix things, to handle things themselves, or that there really isn't the concept of repairing certain things, and so they really know that they're going to have to make adjustments on their own. Running to get a YouTube video to work on something doesn't sound very, it doesn't really turn those folks off. People who are very used to learning and working and having to do things on their own from an online source or being walked through it are not scared by that sort of support. So that is something to say as well. I'm seeing people who are coming into the space who are used to that, or who are coming into the space from a craft side where there's a lot of sharing and cross-pollination and people in groups who are helping each other get through problems. Having an official company be as responsive as they are makes a difference. And I would say if there's one thing for the traditional companies to start paying attention to, they need to be, Johnny's on the spot the way that the Buy folks are in the social media if they want to do the same thing. I don't know that they really want to, or that they need to, because honestly, the market's not the same. And in fact, that was kind of the weird thing to see, is that I think some of the things that were a little incorrect about the show, this show is a massively commercial production show, everything around it. And there was kind of some weird mismatches as to who thought what part of their market was for who, like who was serving prosumer small production versus who is serving large production mass shops. I don't think everybody was really clear on that, and everybody was trying to serve everybody. And there was a little bit of, I thought there was a little bit of confusion as to who was serving the ideal client for their particular company. And I think not everybody was on the right track with that, but it's certainly not a bad thing. It just meant that there was a really interesting mixture of people from all sides of this thing. But with that, I want to move on into, like I said, I've got limited voice left in me today. I want to move into stuff that's important as well. Like I said, I want to get to Embroidery on Demand and mention it really quickly. And then I do want to get to just go ahead and confirm again my Impressions Expo stuff as it's coming up and tell you what's coming on for the next show. So I do want to get to the next topic. Embroidery on Demand. This was kind of the catchphrase, but I'm going to tell you something, all right? Printing on demand, which is the big thing, POD. You saw that on that slide from the stalls booth, from the outside of the stalls booth. They had that cool big graffiti booth that had the POD thing on the side, and they were, really pushing that printing on demand concept. Now maybe I'll pull that up again if I can find it. There we go. They had this big thing that said POD starts here, and I'm going to bring that up again. Printing on demand, any logo, anywhere. You see this concept of being able to create this digital stuff and sell it. And be able to do the fulfillment directly is massive, right? So printing on demand is really important. And in the world of, direct to film production, it's really easy to do single strike offs, individualized pieces, one-off. Printing is really simple to do, or at the very least, it's becoming very simple to handle. Whereas when we got to talk to it, and I am just going to say the two big players who were talking about this stuff and who were presenting classes, I showed you briefly the Apparel Zone Open Theater that was there. The people who were talking about this in the embroidery world were Melco. Melco was there because they were launching a thing called Summit Manager. I'm going to show you a little bit about that in just a second, just to let you know what I'm talking about. And Stalls. So Stalls, as you saw, was there kind of pitching their printing on demand. They were also printing their own, or pushing their own fulfillment, because they now have the ability to fulfill direct decoration themselves to some degree. And they were pushing their engine, which is an e-commerce plus job management, shipping management, overall shop management process, as well as all of that fulfill engine, Stall's fulfill engine. They were pressing that, and they were showing their own fulfillment center and how they made this printing on demand thing happen, and they include embroidery in their shop. I am going to show you where the hole is, because there's a massive hole in the embroidery on demand side. And what I'm going to say is this: as much as I very much think this is interesting, and I'm going to go through those technologies, I'm just going to say that this is not, like people say, there's nothing new under the sun. There are new things going on, and the entire tool chain being unified is perhaps it's the most seamless perhaps than it's been, especially with people really being much more willing to adopt software as a service and subscriptions and things like that, where we largely live on cloud-based software. We really don't feel as strange about letting a cloud-based solution handle all this stuff now. And I think people are on board for this kind of cloud-based, full tilt software solution that doesn't live on their own servers. That's something that seeing that and the cooperation between all of these pieces of equipment is very interesting. And I'm going to kind of show you that. And I'll actually, as I get onto this, I'll post some links in the comments so you guys can check out videos and stuff after we're done here to see what's going on with their fulfillment engine, because it is kind of cool. And certainly what's going on in their fulfillment center is interesting. But I'm going to say that the meat of what's actually going on in the embroidery world has not changed in the same way that the mass adoption of direct to film has changed print. So, number one, we've been doing personalization forever. There was kind of a comment from the stage where it's like, oh, not that many people are offering personalization. And I kind of had to call, shenanigans on that one. Names are absolutely the most basic thing that all embroiderers, up to and including people who are not super custom embroiderers, uniform shops, gift shops, people doing on-site activations in fashion houses, names and personalization, monogrammers, that it's like the most ubiquitous embroidery that gets done is personalized, is individual. Maybe not being offered as an e-commerce solution in concert with either company stores or team stores. Because what was actually happening as far as embroidery on demand in the way that it was pitched, what was actually happening was not something that I would call super, super new. It was more a chain of other technologies together that made it more seamless. So let's first just talk about the technologies that were being offered, and then we will get on to what I think kind of this really comes down to as far as what we're doing and what we can learn from this. But let's just kind of quickly talk about what's going on with these different technologies. So the thing that was being launched, and I'll go ahead and kind of pull this down. We'll go ahead and show this up on screen share for a second. The thing that was being launched by Melco is Melco Summit Manager. And so what this is just a much more put together version. One second, guys. I may have to stop. I've got one of our lovely cats has gotten into my studio. Apparently, my wife is busy and did not catch him, so I might have to bring him out of here. One moment, folks. I think I'll go and throw up the thumbnail and I'll put him out real quickly. Otherwise, we will be hearing him the whole time. Sorry about that, folks. We have an elderly cat friend, and he is very, very loud. So I apologize for that. I didn't think I wanted to have him yell through the whole session. I'll try and make sure he's doing okay. He just likes to see everybody and sit in their laps, and not something easy to do while we're talking. So let's quickly go back through Embroidery on Demand. I will try not to let that happen again. But Melco Summit Manager was what they were launching. Let's get back to it real quickly, and we'll move on from there. So they were launching Melco Summit Manager. Like I said, this is essentially management software to treat your single heads like a fleet. So this is not something that's all that particularly new. We've been doing stuff like this before. However, they really are unifying this concept, and they're working on all of this kind of high quality intelligent stuff. And they're putting this together with a cloud-based web service that they're running. So Fusion, right? So that's something just to kind of be aware of. They are launching this, and they launched this all here. So they're simplifying operations, boosting productivity, because you can queue jobs intelligently. And if you guys don't know about this, though we've done this certainly before, it also had like bar coding, so the fetching of designs from the machine. So the ability to fetch designs live from the machine. That's just one of those things that I think it's not entirely new, but it is a much more seamless integration than it has been before. And then what we saw was it being paired with Stahl's Fulfill engine, because it turns out when Stahl's came to talk about their printing on demand setup and their fulfillment setup, they actually decided to show their Fulfill engine and their fulfillment center. And I'll show you both of these things. A Fulfill engine is their software that helps you to do data entry and sourcing and online selling, and of course, scan to print, integrated shipping, and everything else that's related, including outsourcing being part of that. And to the point, we got to see a little bit of their video, and I'm not going to play a bunch of the audio or anything here, but you just can see that not only are they running all that print on demand heat press stuff you would expect from Stahl's and you'd expect from the DTF world, but you're also seeing the fact that they're running their fulfillment onto Melco machines. So they've integrated that with the whole Summit Manager system, and you can see that bins. They are scanning them in as they go, and then as they work on these pieces, and I'll go ahead and expand this. I wanted this to be full screen earlier. As they're working in this piece, I'm just going to go ahead and stop this. You're going to notice that they are able to scan and bring in the jobs from barcodes that are individually stickered on each of the garments as they are accepted. And what this allows them to do is essentially have an online e-commerce solution that's keeping everything together. And then as they get done with the e-commerce solution, it puts this stuff out into the reception part of this. So they are doing intake and processing. And once they process in the orders, as they go in, it's attaching all of the information to a barcode that is both has a human readable section and a barcode on each garment, When the garments are then staged and binned, they end up in production. And as they get to the machines, they're essentially scanning barcodes at the machines, which is pulling up all the relevant information for colors and layout and everything else. So as they do that, they're being given all this information, and it's just automating the processes, right? So it's not that it's anything necessarily new, but as you can see, he's actually going to show this piece here. I'll let it zoom in a little bit. You're going to see QR codes being used to essentially communicate this information to the system and to pull this stuff up. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, barcoding designs has been around for a long time. The ability to pull up information from barcode stuff has been around quite a long time. I have seen machines before the era of them having displays on them that had a regular red line barcode scanner back in the day. It's not a 2D piece of information like, as you know, height and width here, as you would have in a QR code that has a lot more dense information on that. But it is something where it's removing a lot of the difficulty of pulling information. So what is interesting about this in essence, right? So what we have is e-commerce. We have intake of garments being managed and the garments being individually tagged. We have bin management. So we're putting garments in, we're receiving them into bins. We are then binning them at production and queuing them intelligently for machines. And then we are retrieving necessary information just in time as we need to produce. And in fact, the other thing is it takes the unit of the garments down to the individual garment. And especially if you're careful about how you set up your orders and your designs and everything else, it means you can produce garments out of sequence and they end up in a bin until the bin is full. You can literally, as garments are ordered, they are ordered automatically by the system. As they arrive, you can run them. It doesn't take a lot of extra time to load and run. And so you can run the individual garments. And then as they are finished into the bin, as we arrive at completion, then we can send them out. And when you're talking about a fleet of single heads, it's a little easier to manage in that way. However, this really is suited primarily to highly individualized personal orders with small maximum orders, small order size throughput. But that's kind of the world right now. It's a lot more of the world than it used to be. Back in the day, it was larger throughput. Now it is not. So just to grab a comment, and it is true from Lisa, she says, wow, that can really streamline a shop, reduce many human errors. Yeah, no, very interesting stuff. What I'm going to say is there is still a hole that's not being kind of addressed in all this. And I'm going to make this clear to everybody, because the thing is, when we talk print on demand, right? The difference between embroidery on demand and print on demand. Print on demand, a user can reasonably upload art that might be print ready or adjacent or easily processed into art that a DTF printer or DTG, if you're using direct to garment instead of direct to film, can then print, pardon me, without necessarily involving an artist or someone to work on it. Embroidery on demand, as it was shown here, there's nothing wrong with it because this is something we've done before, but it's not the same. It's not custom embroidery from original art. It's what we've been doing for a long time in e-commerce, and this is the chain. It's stock designs, prearranged, selected and curated for the store, ready to run, digitized by an artist. So you have to work this out with the eventual, either with the customers in mind or with the direct company store, team store, whatever, before we start. You have to have your digitized designs ready, or at least you have to know you're doing that. Plus personalization. The things that were actually being done live for the e-commerce is personalization. It's the addition of text. And so it's e-commerce with stock designs plus personalization. So what is different? And then, of course, and on the production side, the things that were happening are single head fleet operation. Been doing that for a long time. Doesn't necessarily have to be networked in that way. The thing that made it very interesting, very different, was the level of automation, the ability to have that informational flow. Those are the two things. So the information flow and the very metered, queued up workflow of the orders and the material through the shop, that was interesting. And the seamlessness of it, including, like I said, the automation involved in that. The fact that once the order was taken from e-commerce, ordering, materials, all purchased, everything is automated up to the point of receiving. You do have to do the receiving yourself, and you're moving things from bin to bin, obviously. But I mean, there's a world where that will be handled. But even then, at present, the automation of that informational flow is a pretty big deal, right? So that automation is a big deal. I understand that. I will say, however, when we're talking about what embroidery on demand really is, it is not print on demand. It's not the same animal. What it really is, as it stands right now, no matter what we add to it, no matter what the technology behind it is this. It is curated stock with personalization. Yes, it had very solid e-commerce front ends that were showing personalization, that had loaded fonts, that had accurate embroidery previews, that allowed you to do things like color changes and what have you. Those things are there. So it's customization, yes. It is more than just a stock design site like it used to be back in the day, where we would show the design, we would let you fill in your letters, and you could at least say this is the name I want, and we didn't show any feedback. Certainly, it's not like the earliest versions of this, but even you guys know that I used to be with Deco Network, previous to being with in Brilliance, and at the time at Deco Network, we had all this. We had the ability to show early on, so years and years ago. We're talking more than a decade ago. We had the ability to show embroidery in position, to type in the embroidered fonts, and those embroidered fonts would preview correctly. That stuff was already happening a decade ago. What is, like I said, what is interesting about this is the automation, certainly, and maybe I would say also the management portion of like Summit Manager with a single head fleet, because you really can manage more of the settings on the individual stuff, and the ability, like I said, the informational workflow. It does eliminate a lot of human error. Definitely Lisa's correct about that. It takes a lot of choice out of the thing. You don't have to choose to pick what kind of design and what things and what colors. It is told to you. Now, ultimately, we all know the color an embroidery machine runs is the one you put on the spool and the one that you select the needle for. But it was all carried through, and it was marked and attached to each garment. So that is interesting. But as per the usual, when we talk about embroidery on demand, the gap is always that there is not, at present day, a way for a customer to come in with like a raster graphic, a JPEG, a PNG, even their SVG, even their AI file, whatever it is. I mean, .ai Illustrator file, or hey, even more prevalent, even more important lately, that they're going to go to, they're going to go to ChatGPT, they're going to go to Gemini, they're going to go to Copilot, whatever AI they want. They're going to feed in some prompt, get back a raster image of a finished embroidery. So it's not even art, it's a fake finished embroidery. There's no way for them to kick that file into a custom site, and the digitizing is done and it is handed off directly to the machine. That's not happening, and certainly not happening without a digitizer involved, even if someone does automate the process of sending that information to a digitizer and then having them do it, and then they're kicking it into the system. Yes, auto digitizing exists in some formats. No, it is not going to handle that kind of input all that well. No, it is not at the level of a skilled digitizer whatsoever. So the hole that exists in embroidery on demand is the same hole that's existed in embroidery in a long time. It's that you are not yet at a place where the digitizing side of this, the adaptation from flat or print art into embroidery, is not automated in such a way that you're going to have the same kind of results you might have from direct to film. Now, are there artists in the middle of that process as well? Absolutely. I am not going to discount that. If you ever see on Two Regular Guys show, we have Dane Clement on all the time, who talks about prepping art for DTF, even AI art. And there is a real art and a skill to the production preparation that can be done. But there are also people who are fairly, kind of ham-handedly slapping print art directly into those machines and running them out the door in the hopes of making this a fully automated process, right? And you can. There is at least the ability for that to happen, whereas you cannot just throw a PNG at an embroidery machine and things happen. That's not really happening right now. Can we throw them through a process and you get something out of it? Yes. Is it the quality of a real piece? No. Is it something that I would do for mass production and sign my name to? Absolutely not. Not in the slightest. So embroidery on demand is interesting because we still see, as we saw Stahl's SF1, you saw in their fulfillment center. It is crazy how much automation is going on there. it is absolutely taking a ton of the trouble of operation and moving things through the workflow out of this equation. However, um, despite the fact that I'm very impressed by the automation, I am very impressed by the informational workflow. And honestly, because I'm somebody who's been harping on centralized information systems and job management systems for a long time, it does my heart good to see people caring about that information. At the same time, looking at that, saying that makes this as seamless perhaps as print on demand, I would say no. We still have, there is a void. There is a chasm we have to jump as embroiderers, and that is the preparation of art and digitizing. It has been, it will still be, it is that plus the sampling of designs that makes the fully custom decoration less likely to take off in this same way. However, this model has been working for me in e-commerce for a very long time and works very well. Pre-made, curated stock designs with a carefully selected set of garments with added personalization is an absolute killer solution for company stores, for team stores, and for e-commerce in general in the embroidery world. I've done it on several platforms, from building my own out to using, the Deco networks of the world. And you could have, of course, have, Inktavo or whatever else. There's a million, not a million. There are several solutions that have similar tools involved. Obviously, Melco also has their solution they're now pitching as part of this, and dovetailing it directly into their Summit Manager. These solutions exist. However, I've got to say, ultimately, with any software, with any designs, with any e-commerce, you can do this thing. You can do curated stock plus personalization in a smart way. And people have been doing it for a very long time. And if you aren't doing this, that is a great way for you to handle the concept of direct ordering, e-commerce, and embroidery on demand. As an embroiderer right now, whether or not you ever go to the point of more automation, certainly I would love to see, at the very least, centralized information flow, and maybe that you yourself take it upon yourself to package your garments in such a way as you do your receiving, split them up into orders as we used to do, package them with the proper information so you can look them up on site once you get to your embroidery machine and have all that information there digitally. You don't have to go to QR codes and automated networking to get this done. Will it remove mistakes? Sure. It is a evolution, not a revolution. That's what I'm going to say right now. I'm not saying it's not evolving. It's absolutely evolving very quickly. And the seamlessness of it was impressive. But embroidery on demand, as a blanket term, because it's being used now that printing on demand is as important, I would say it's not necessarily a full revolution. It's not changing everything that's happening in the embroidery world. It is an evolution of what we do and doing it better and doing it more consistently and making it more hands-off. However, anybody in the embroidery world right now with solutions that are out there can do this. You don't have to replace all of your machines, and you don't have to replace everything with, QR code scanners in order to get a lot of the value of this. It's more about what I would consider that initial setup, that curation of designs, the setting up of colors, the understanding of your stock garment collection and what have you that makes that work. Also, I do love the single head fleet. Not going to lie, I'm a multi-head machine guy who ran on 12 heads and later on 8s and 6s pretty frequently. But single head fleet is a great way to go. Do I love the automation? Absolutely. Are there other ways to do it? Yes, there are. Is the seamlessness and the ability to buy into a couple products and just have everything happen new? That's new. That's great. You don't have to piece it together yourself. It is much more seamless. It is not, however, outside of the world of what we can do now. And you really can do a lot of what is being done. Like I said, don't let the buzzword version of this thing, don't let the concept of embroidery on demand stymie you and think that you can't do it. With your equipment right now, you can do it. As equipment gets better, if you buy into a centralized shop management software, will it be easier? Absolutely. 100%. But you can absolutely make use of these practices in such a way. And in fact, all of these still require human practices. If you're going to sticker garments correctly, if you're going to put them in bins, if you're going to move them through your shop in an orderly manner, that still requires you to be on board and to have the right procedures. And in fact, I've got a good comment here too. DJ Kev says, sounds like a personal SOP, standard operating procedure. And yes, SOPs are huge. Defining the workflow in your shop. Don't get me wrong. I used to do flow charts, and I know that sounds crazy. I used to write old school flow charts, but defining the way your information and your garments move through your shop from orders to receiving, and how, like I said, information is one thing and garments are the other thing. So work flowing through your shop and information flowing through your shop. These are things you can control yourself. And if you have a solid standard operating procedure, very much like DJ Kev says here, absolutely, you can do a lot of what's going on there. So you don't necessarily have to buy into more technology. Will more technology make it more seamless? Yes. Can you do it now? Absolutely. A little bit of discipline, a little bit of time spent on the planning will make this happen. In fact, I wish I had the rest of my shop to show you instead of just the funny wall of fame, wall of fame, wall of shame. The truth of the matter is we used to do this ourselves. We would do live queuing. We would set up order queues. We would physically set up jobs in order, very similarly to what they did, not with bins, but by individual orders. And we would set them up in production queue order. What's interesting about this too, and I think what does make it different, I know I mentioned it a little bit, what is an interesting kind of automation is the bin system, whereby the unit is not this order of garments, the unit is a garment. And because there's a lot of kind of standardization of colors and layout and whatever, you do have the ability with those curated collections to fulfill like one garment at a time, put it in a bin. If you've got a garment that came into your shop, like the shipping hasn't shipped the whole order, we used to wait for an entire order to be complete on the receiving end to run it. On multi-head equipment, you really don't have a lot of other options because you want to fill all your heads, right? You don't want to be running one head out of 12 and not have the rest of the garments here if only one of the garments arrived today and we still have to wait 2 more days to get the rest of the garments. We don't want to run several times in the meantime, though. I mean, honestly, if your machines are empty, then maybe you do. But suffice it to say, we would definitely move other things up and down out of that production chain to make sure that we had full machines running. Whereas single head fleet plus reducing the information and the garment size for a run to one means that we can then run things as they come in, put them in bins that are assigned and locked into that direct system. Once again, can you do this with your own standard operating procedures, with stickering your own garments, your own shirts, what have you, with individual information? Absolutely, you can. You could do this yourself. Is it a lot easier when you have an order in front of you and you click print out my stickers? Absolutely it is. The system is going to make all the difference. What I am going to say is, dip your toes into it. If this is something that you think you want to approach, Embroidery on Demand is within your possibilities. It is getting easier. You may want to buy into one of these systems. I will say there's also some other interesting stuff there because they are doing outsourcing and other kinds of decoration and everything else. Buying into these systems does mean you get access to that kind of world where, like, say, Stalls may have all of these other production facilities that they can then lend you the power of if you don't have that production in-house. All interesting stuff. But I'll just say, I would say don't let the buzzword kind of stymie you. Understand that it's something that's already being done. It's just being done in a much more automated fashion. And of course, with new machines that have things like tension control and pressure fit control, you can just control more centrally than you used to be able to without having an operator have to do it by feel. So there's that. So let's go ahead and finish off with the very last thing we need to talk about here, which is just saying, as I said kind of last week, Impressions Long Beach is confirmed. Now, I have heard that the listing is not fully complete yet, but I've got ink. I have a link. I have all of the sponsor stuff in hand. I know that we're going forward and that the Avengers, as we said, DJ Kev said last time, the Avengers are going to assemble. You're going to get myself and Joe and Justin and Katie will be there teaching Technique Toolkit. The thing that is different as of right now is we do have a promotional link. So I just want to let you guys know we actually have a link for you to sign up. Now, I know somebody said this morning, I think actually Doug said this morning, that they still have not put up our class description yet. I asked today. I will get an ETA for that as soon as I know. You will know. And if you watch my social media, you'll see that. But this is the link. I'm going to actually go ahead and stop and copy this out so you guys can get it if you want it. I do have my own link for inviting you to the show. And here's the deal. What we do have this time, which is great, is a code for the entire show. So if you want to get a full conference pass, which a lot of people who are doing education like to do, I'm just going to let you know, if you go to this link and use this code, so use the code SPEAK210. SPEAK 210 for 20% off of a full conference pass for Long Beach. So yes, our description isn't up yet. It will be up soon. And there's other sessions that you will want to check out that you might want to be a part of that are also coming up very soon. The thing to be absolutely certain is we have a listing. We have our gateway, which is the thing that's on the back end where we get to upload all of our documents and everything so that you guys can download them. We are logged in. We have confirmation. Technique Toolkit is happening. It is happening on the day before the show starts in Long Beach. We have a link for promotions. So we definitely are on that link. It shows all four of us. We are on it. We're ready to rock. And if you use the code SPEAK210, you will get 20% off of a full conference pass. And so even if you don't see our listing there, the great thing is if you've got a full conference pass, it doesn't matter if you see the full listing because you know you have access to every one of the show's educational options when you get there. And the other thing to make clear about that too is we're doing something beyond Technique Toolkit. So you're definitely getting Technique Toolkit. That's happening. But what we are currently working out right now, and I cannot tell you for sure when the session is going to occur, is we're also going to do a roundtable discussion where the four of us, the four embroidery Avengers, as it was said, will be in individual tables with groups of about 10 people each. And you'll get to rotate through all of us and ask us questions that are directly related to our particular part of the embroidery world. Certainly, you're going to hear threads and applique and the retail stuff from Joe. You're going to get from Katie all of her direct experience for small run application, and she's got some really interesting techniques she's evolved. You've got Justin, who's coming in with all of his knowledge of 3D foam and hat embroidery, especially, but also digitizing in general. And then you have me talking digitizing, software, honestly, informational workflow, e-commerce, and acquisition. All of these things are stuff that I've worked on. You can ask me those questions too. So there should be also listed soon that roundtable discussion. That one is a little more tenuous as to when it's going to happen, but Technique Toolkit is absolutely on. We absolutely have a link. So you'll be seeing us absolutely shown on this link. And if you have the code SPEAK210, you get your 20% off. So at the very least, I can tell you Technique Toolkit is on. We are going to be doing uncommon looks for these corporate clients. We're going to make it where when you're working with retail, business to business, or business to business clients, you can give them a more retail look, something interesting that makes you stand apart. And we're going to have all four of us doing our individual sessions as part of this big workshop day. So 4 in 1. You go to that workshop day, you get all of us talking to you about these individual techniques that we know and love and have employed, including, I know I'm going to be talking about specific use cases and customers that I have shown these things to work with. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. That's coming up very soon. So, much love for Impressions Long Beach. I will be there. You're going to see me in California one way or another. Like I said, we've had a little issue with things getting listed, being up there, but they will be up soon. And I do have full confirmation of that. But with that, what I'm going to tell you is that we already have a show started for next week. A lot of you guys have said you want to see me do more interview stuff. And though this is someone we've had on before, we really had a good time talking in Dallas and we wanted to jump back on. I'm actually going to go ahead and bring on my friend Joe Kramer again. So Joe wants to be on the show a little bit more often. He's been really kind of sharpening up some great educational offerings, and he wants to talk more about that as well. So we're going to talk embroidery and education. We're going to talk a little bit about trade show stuff as well, and we're going to do some Q&A. So if you just have questions for Joe Kramer and myself, it'd be a great time to hear both of our talks on this. And honestly, you're going to see some of the other folks, some of these embroidery Avengers are coming on. I know that Katie Woodman from Trouble Me Not Embroidery is going to be on the show as well soon. So we're going to talk to her about when she's got time for that. And I've got other guests lined up. But the first one, we're going to go ahead and go with my first guest ever again. We're going to bring Joe Kramer back on, and he'll probably be a little bit more regularly tuning in when he's got some technique stuff to share or when we are working on some fun educational stuff together. He and I will be having some more episodes and probably some other content outside of the normal episodes. But next week, we've already committed. I got Joe signing off on this. Unless something comes up that's outside of our control, next week you're going to see myself and Joe Kramer talking about embroidery and education, and then also the value of doing different kinds of education, both online and at the shows, and what we see as that value, what we see as that relevance, as well as just doing some Q&A and talking technique stuff, because that's just what we like to do. We like to talk shop. If there's stuff you want to see him do, if there's stuff you want to see other people talk about, maybe that you want me to bring in, or people who you think I should be talking to, by all means, let me know. You're going to see more of that, and certainly you're going to see more content from me outside of this channel and partially attached to the channel about, like I said, more production content and certainly some Embrilliance specific stuff as well coming up in the near future. Not immediately, but in the near future. And what I would say is, by all means, watch the channels as we get closer and closer to 2026 and see what's going on. There might be some interesting stuff in the future that you don't know yet and that I can't tell you yet. But there should be some interesting stuff coming down the pike. But for sure, next week, me and Joe talking shop and definitely getting into education and what you can do to learn better and what that relevance of the different types of education are. And of course, Q&A. We take questions no matter what. We'll just hang out, make it happen, and get you guys the information you need to make cool embroidery and sell it. If that is your choice. All right, folks, with that, I'm going to go ahead and let that be the show. My voice has done about as much as it can do, and I apologize for the unscheduled interruption from our good friend, my elderly cat, Otley, who decided to jump in. Apparently, it is Halloween is time for black cats. I apologize for that old boy. He needs a cuddle, apparently, and he decided to bust in the door. Unfortunately, our old house in PA here, which is getting painfully close to 200 years old, the doors don't shut in a real great way. I'm still working on that, and I need to go talk to him. So as you guys say, Lisa says happy Halloween. So happy Halloween to all you guys. And yes, Carol, absolutely. I'm going to go love on that sweet old cat. He's a nice old boy, but he definitely needs a little attention. Poor buddy. I think with my wife out doing her thing for the world, honestly, and for the community out here at the hospital, there's a lot of hours where it's just us together, and he's not used to me putting a closed door between us all the time. I've been letting him in the office a lot these days, hang out under the desk and get warm with dad. But hey, all right, I'm going to go ahead and let that be it for today. I wish you all well. I can't wait for you guys to be here with Joe and me next week. And like I said, you have stuff you want us to cover. You have stuff you want us to talk about. You have things you want me to talk about. You have techniques you want to learn. Hit me up in my socials. Go onto that contact page. Leave a comment here wherever you're listening to this, and I'll get back to you because I'm here for you guys. All right, folks. Well, I think that's it. And we'll go have a happy Halloween with my mascot, Otley the cat. All right, folks. Catch you guys later, and I can't wait to see you again next week.